Okay, now we look at another recreation of an Egyptian mummy. This one was just a single head that was found in the extra overflow, believe it or not, down in the museum of the University of Melbourne. And so they collaborated with the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine and some important people that have been involved with things like this in the past to make a recreation. This was done about 6 years ago, but I'd like for you to take a look at what they came out with on what this ancient Egyptian woman looked like.
Medicine, who conducted CT scanning of the mummified head.
So you really can't see anything. This is one of the ones that's like, well, the last one that I showed, where the wrappings are covering most, if not all, of the head there. You can tell the nose is being crushed somewhat. It's all around very tight, and because of the bitumen that's been attached that you can see on the forehead up there, and that layer that's been done, and there's been a layer done on her body below that, kind of in a coating and then a wrapping. It's all stuck into it with the fabric, and it would really do a lot of damage to it to try to get any of those off.
So this non-invasive technique allowed us to look through all the layers of the specimen.
Again, you can see how the wrappings are just really encasing this to where it just looks like a blob somewhat. But by using a CT scan, they can peer right through that and see other things. One remarkable thing they found during the CT scan is that much like Thuya and Yuya, her eyes have been recreated in her sockets, and then eyelids put back over them, and then the mummification process finished off, which is pretty interesting. One wonders if they were to take and actually go through the fabric here and get those pieces out, what color the eye would be. The forensic artist here actually says that she's not going off of what we know of the ancient Egyptians. She's going off the current population somewhat. And with what we know nowadays, with the genetics that have showed up, and even to the point that it touted straight out that the current population only has about a 1% connection with all the ancient nobility that they have the DNA of. And the main reason for the difference is post-Roman admix from slavery. So it's really kind of odd whenever that's exactly the opposite of what Afrocentrics try to relate in any way. But let's get into this. There's one other person involved with a major portion of this that I have other videos about. And in fact, the artist here is one that I've seen before doing another recreation. Well, let's just get on with it. So they basically know this head is over 2,000 years old. They don't have a dating on it because that's all they've got. They could take a small chip of that fabric that's on her there in the bitumen and probably get a pretty accurate date. I'm going to say they're probably looking at over 3,000 years old, but they know that it's over 2,000 years old. Well, why is that statement out there? Well, because mummies kind of quit after that a little bit. The whole thing changed somewhat and so on. So it has to be before those periods, of course. But looking at the things and the way that they've done it here, just me and myself are saying this is probably another 1,000 years older than what they're stating here, if not more, maybe 1,500 more. Somewhere in that range right there, they were doing this, and the heavy tar bitumen that all sticks to it and so on like that, and the fabric looked different during certain times and so on. So let's get into this just a little bit again and take a look at what they go through here. So they CT scan it, and by doing that they can make a perfect replica of the skull that's inside of that. Now this lady that's here is Janet Davey. Says it in the bottom left-hand corner, although it's just a little out of screen. But Dr. Janet Davey is a forensic Egyptologist, and she was also involved just a few years ago, somewhere around the time of this happening, with testing natron out. So she actually got some real natron and then ran it through the mummification process with a lot of different people's types of hair and color and different types of hair and so on, to see what the natron process would do, because they kept telling her that the reason that the hair was so straightened out and some of these are slightly curly and so on was because of the natron process. And the reason that they would find blonde and red-headed mummies and so on is the natron process. But her being a lady that dyes her hair somewhat, knows that that really couldn't probably be an effect, but she wanted to test it. So she took the hair and put it through the process, and none of the hair changed types in any way, shape, or form, even loosening the curls. But more importantly too, none of them even changed one single shade of color. And the mummification process only lasted a certain amount of time, but from what I hear after this fact, she did it again and just let it go way long, like whoopsie. What if we went a little longer? Would that make any difference? And again, it made no difference. Here's a picture of them looking upon the mummy when it's in there, and this is where you can tell it's got those eye caps on, because it looks like there's still an eyeball really there when that had been long dehydrated away. Looking at her phenotype off of that, they built a skull and then started doing a forensic recreation again on it. Show what she looks like, things that are used to find missing people and things like that. Let's see what she comes up with. So they 3D printed this skull out to the micromillimeter and exactly what her skull was at, and then they worked off of that point. And here it is. Once it's constructed, they had to make sure that it's perfect and so on, or do the whole thing again. And from what I understand, it was over 140 hours just to get this thing printed in its exacting way. So the forensic artist steps up to the plate. We can already tell its phenotype. This is the forensic sculpture, the sculpture that's here, and in doing so, she says, well, I kind of applied it this way, and then I'm utilizing the current population for its possible ethnicity. So again, that's a little bit incorrect. Whenever we've gone back through, and even genetics has said, well, it wasn't really that ethnic back then, so if you want to find this girl, she wouldn't have had that case. In fact, tell you, I've looked at a lot of these forensics, and a few of them they'll tell you the current population now, and it's like, why do you keep doing that? We're talking about the ancient Egyptians. I know everybody tries to say that it's the same, but what is the difference? Now here, up in the top left-hand corner, I'll show you a picture of what women are drawn like. Now men are drawn with a darkness to them, and of course a lot of people have taken to use that and never show the light women and then go, they got this dark, they couldn't be Caucasians, or all kinds of statements are made out of it. But then they don't show the women and just how pale they are. And then the question is, if they have the ability to get that pale, who are we looking at? Is it really an ethnic person that you're trying to say? And the answer is no. By the way, this is the 1000th time I've mentioned this, but red ochre males and pale females are found all over the Mediterranean and Middle East at this time, including Egypt, and no one's confused about any of these people in the way that they used to be. From the Minoans, from the Etruscans, Sumeria, Persians, the Mitanni, and Greeks using red ochre males and pale females. You can see in this recreation here, they've got those dots, or those pegs that are on the face that really show you how much meat somebody has in that area. And they start off with that, working their way out, and then smooth it off and finish it, and that's just about what it is. And what it is what it is. So they'll go through a few rotations here showing you them applying those different levels on there up to the level of the pegs. And then pretty much what she looks like roughed in to another level, to another level, to another level, and then to being finished. And so now we're looking at a recreation of an Egyptian woman from over 2,000 years ago, if not 3 or more. Something tells me that I just wish they'd have it checked a little bit and maybe get a somewhat of a dating on it. And then it'd be great in the exhibit, instead of being real ambiguous, to be able to go probably around the 13th, 14th dynasty, probably around the 23rd dynasty, probably around the 18th dynasty, and so on. I don't know if you're getting the same vibes that I am, but I'm getting those Julia Roberts Pretty Woman vibes off this exactly. And even though she tried to make it somewhat ethnic and left the eye color as being brown, we can show, and I have repeatedly, that there are green-eyed and blue-eyed Egyptians. So what's the possibility of her having that too? It's greater than let me tell you. It's something that would be, well, almost expected once you go into it pretty deep. And instead of claiming that they're all brown and there might be a few blue-eyed people, like I've shown for years now on the fact of people that are currently living in Egypt today, before it was much more prominent, and especially through the nobility that all went down through. And believe me, with her being of her stature that she was at, she would be distantly related all the way down to those people of nobility of old. Let me know what you think here, but I'm getting a definite Jennifer or Julia Roberts look on this thing here. I'm not getting anything that would show me anything different, and the professional forensics did not. Here we're looking upon the face of an ancient Egyptian, which you've had that dark-haired wig. Oh yeah, they had that dark-haired wig. They said way a long time ago they rule over the dark-haired people. Makes you wonder what hair they had really had. I'll show a picture right now of Wiki. You can just go to Wiki and go to hair, and then just pull it down to curly, and you'll find that there's a wig there that's actually a scalp of a woman that was found on a mummy. But with that, it was covered up under a wig that looks just like this. She had a Farrah Fawcett blonde hair, and it tucked it up under her dark wig. And we, of course, can see all these dark wigs going on in Egypt. But now that we've had the forensic and genetic testing on these type of people so often, it's getting to the point where we realize that the eye thing is not like, well, just do it brown as ambiguity, but maybe you ought to at least flip a coin on that, or perhaps more. Anyhow, let me know what you think. A lot of these pictures, when they show up, just really bring to life somebody who never existed. I said on one recently, would it be neat to be able to take and bring her back to life and then show her what's going on in the world today? What would she think of ancient Egypt now that it's all gone to ruins, but it's become kind of a tourist thing? Would she be glad that they still are, revering it so much, or would it be heartbreaking that it's not still going or to the level that it used to be? What would she think about what people are saying about Egypt, as if people have amnesia and don't really know what's going on? What could she tell you about the way things really were? Let me know what you think downstairs, and I'm going to do a few more of these forensics as they go here, and they keep popping up on my side. If I think one's interesting or has something to say about it, I might throw a few more of these at you. Luckily for you, they're short videos usually, unless I go off in left field. On this one, I'm just going to insert a couple of pictures and we're done. Peace.